Good morning, students. It is January the 11th at 8:04 a.m. I'm going to go ahead and record our session today. I'm going to keep an eye on the clock to make sure I don't go over 50 minutes. What I will do is we're going to go ahead and talk about our next unit of study after color, which is space. And I'm going to go ahead and lecture today over the PowerPoint that is in the Google Classroom, and we'll look at the vocabulary words as well. So when we talk about space in art, basically we're talking about actual three-dimensional space when we make sculptural forms. But when we're working on a flat two-dimensional piece of paper, then we're talking about two-dimensional space, the illusion of creating space on a flat sheet of paper. Obviously, there is no real space when you're drawing on a piece of paper. It's an illusion, okay? That's where artists were dubbed as illusionists in the past because they could trick the eye. They could make people think they were seeing something that wasn't there. So that's a pretty neat thing. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going into Google Classroom, and I'll just select first hour. So this is where you need to go as well. Whether you're in my first hour class, my third hour class, or rather my fourth hour class or my fifth hour class. So you're just going to scroll down past the things we've already studied. And for those of you who are just now taking this course this second semester, we've already covered line, shape, value, texture, color, and now we're going to deal with space. Okay, so if you wanted to go back and go into those other areas and read the assignments and do some of those activities on your own, by all means go for it, because you'll really enjoy the curriculum. All right, now you'll click on Space Lecture Slides. And we're going to scroll down a little bit more, and then we're going to open up this PowerPoint. And I'm going to go ahead and open it with Google Slides. And I'm going to put it in slideshow mode. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and talk about space. As all of you remember, you need to get your sketchbooks out and take notes, okay? All right, so this is the sixth element of art that we are studying. We have studied again, number 1, line, number 2, shape, number 3, value, number 4, texture, number 5, color, and now number 6, space. So when we talk about spatial perception, our conceptions of space are really conditioned by our experience of the world, what we've actually gone through. So vision is perceived through your eyes, obviously, but what you experience that you see through your eyes, that actually channels through your mind, okay? So visual experience involves the whole pattern of nerve and brain responses to what we see. Our eyes perceive the world around us as we continually shift our focus of attention, all right? I mean, when you pan your eyes across the room, your brain is absorbing really a lot of information, all right? So in the process, we have two different types of vision, okay? And this is a little bit of science here. Stereoscopic and kinesthetic, okay? So we have two eyes that are slightly apart from each other. We're actually receiving two different views, because if you close your right eye and just look out of your left eye, there's one camera, so to speak. But if you close your left eye and you look out of your right eye, you're seeing things similarly, but differently. It's like two different cameras, okay? But then those two different views, our brain has to be able to make those two views basically combine into one. So that's what we know as stereoscopic. It refers to our ability to mentally combine these two slightly different views into one image. And this process enables us to experience vision three-dimensionally, and it makes it possible for us to judge distances, okay? Now, with kinesthetic vision, we experience space by combining the movements of our eyes and bodies with our perception of the visual world or the visual field. We traverse object surfaces with our eyes in order to recognize them. Likewise, our eyes travel while viewing an artwork. So our eyes are traversing or moving, okay, trying to absorb the information of what it is we're seeing. And when we look at artwork, our eyes are obviously doing the same thing. So we attempt to organize the artwork's separate parts to be seen as a whole. So furthermore, objects close to the viewer require more ocular movement than those further away. If an object is right in front of you, say this cup, okay, I can see things in much more clearer detail than if I'm looking at something, let's say, 150 yards away. Now, this kinesthetic eye activity adds spatial perception to our vision. So we're going to talk about the major types of space, okay? There's two basic major types of space. One is decorative and one is called plastic. All right, now I'm throwing some words at you. We're not talking about plastic made from the byproducts of the petroleum industry, like a red Dixie cup or a straw, a plastic straw. It's the word plastic is used differently in art. Okay, number one, decorative space. Decorative space is space that lacks real depth as we know it and is confined to the flatness of the picture plane. Now remember, the picture plane is, this is a sheet of paper I'm holding up. The picture plane is the space between these four edges. This is the picture plane. This is the only space where you can make the artwork if this is the surface that you are going to draw on, okay? Now, we're going to take a look at some examples of decorative artwork, all right? And when I use the word decorative, I'm not talking about like decorating your house for Christmas. It's used differently in art. So here we have a piece by Jasper Johns. Now, Jasper Johns was part of the modern art movement. He was an abstract expressionist, and this piece was made in 1955. And I love modern art. It's my favorite period of art to study. I get excited about it. Jasper Johns, this is called White Numbers. So if you look at this piece very carefully, it's pretty flat. I mean, there's not a background, okay? So what you see, what he's done is, this is actually encaustic on linen, okay? Linen is a fabric, kind of like cotton, but it's obviously it's made out of a different material. Just like an artist would use canvas on a stretcher frame, some artists use linen. It's a little bit more expensive. But encaustic is when you actually use melted wax mixed into paint, okay? So some of you who are interested in painting, someday you might want to try painting with encaustic, all right? You have to heat the wax to mix into the paint, so you have to have a heating element. But what he's done is he's taken numbers. If you look at this closely, though, he's made stencils of numbers. So at the top right-hand corner, you see number 1 over here, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then he just repeats the cycle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and he goes to 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and so on. But because he's using the encaustic paint, he's creating actual texture in the painting, because there's surfaces that are actually popping up, and you can see a few shadows as well when the light hits the front of the painting. Now, if you ran your hand across this painting, it would feel a little rough. And though the heavy application of pigment casts shadows in this decorative treatment, there's no pictorial illusion of space. We don't get the feeling of there being a background, or even much of a foreground for that matters. And the images appear very shallow on the picture surface, okay? So this would be considered decorative art, okay? Because it doesn't give us the illusion of space. Okay, so there's number 2, we're going to talk about plastic space, all right? Now the term plastic applies to all spatial imagery other than decorative. Since artwork arises from our experiences of the world, it is natural that it should explore space. So any other type of artwork that depicts space, it's known as plastic space, okay? Now, there are 2 divisions of plastic space: shallow space and deep and infinite space, okay? And we've talked about shallow space and deep space before. So, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about it today. Okay, here is a lovely painting by Jacob Lawrence, and again, he was a modern artist as well. This is called Cabinet Makers. He was an African-American artist, and he is very, very well known in the art world. He's no longer alive, but he created a lot of artwork using gouache, which is an opaque watercolor, and he used tempera paint as well. He used acrylic paint also, and other media, but this is Cabinet Makers. And in this image, we see some space, the illusion of space. You've got some men in the foreground working at this front table, and here you see what looks like maybe a level, and then here's another man. He has a drill. It's actually one of those old-timey hand drills, okay? And then over here to my left, another carpenter is working, and then there's the one back here in the background. He's measuring a cabinet with a ruler, and then there's one in the far background, and he has a tool that looks like a chisel. Now, there is shallow space. This is an interior image, so there's not deep space. The space probably goes back, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 feet, okay? Present day art is largely dominated by shallow space concept. A lot of artists that create images use shallow space, although many contemporary artists work with strong recessed fields. And personally, my artwork, when I do create artwork that is pictorial and representative, I use shallow space myself. I don't create very many images out of the outdoors, all right? Okay, here we have the opposite of shallow space. Here we have an image with deep space, space that's going to go on infinitely forever, okay? So this is a wonderful painting by Albert Bierstadt. It's called View from the Wind River Mountains, and this is a painting of an area in Wyoming. And this was created in 1860. Now, Albert Bierstadt worked as a painter in the 1800s, and you have to stop and remember, this is before a lot of modern technology buildings were built, okay? So America, the United States, has only been a country for 200 years, and this was a time when he was working when there was still a lot of country out there that had not been